Christophe's Story, Chapter 2, The Scar. The next day, Papa was in a hurry when he walked to school with Christophe. When they reached the school, the gates were still locked. There were one or two children already waiting. "Will you be all right?" Papa said. "Yes, Papa," Christophe told him. But no sooner had Papa turned the corner than Jeremy arrived, flanked by his 3 rats. They began to call him names. They used words that he hadn't heard before. Christophe knew that they were not good words. He knew that they were meant to hurt him. He backed against the gates. He was cornered. He saw fingers poking the air, fists balling. A fire broke out in his head. He fisted his hands and lashed out at the ugly, taunting lips. Jeremy put his hand up to his mouth and backed away. Blood streamed from his lip. The rats fell back, watching their leader. "Jelly knees, jelly lips," shouted one of the watching children. The others looked up to the chant. "Jelly knees, jelly lips." "Watch out, bog rolls coming," someone called. Christophe heard the key turn in the lock. The gates opened. "What's going on here?" said Mr. Bogus, the caretaker. "He hit me," cried Jeremy, pointing at Christophe. "He punched me in the mouth." "I'm going to tell Miss Finch." "Help yourself," said Mr. Bogus in his usual grumpy way. He opened the gates. Jeremy flounced off. The children began to stream through the gates. As they passed by, they smiled at Christophe as he had done something really clever. Christophe began to feel pleased with himself. Then Miss Finch appeared. A smug-looking Jeremy stood by her side. His lip was swollen. There were traces of dried blood round his mouth. "Christophe, I want to speak to you," she said. "Did you do this?" She pointed to Jeremy's face. Christophe nodded. "Why?" "He said bad things. Bad things." Christophe began to shiver. He couldn't stop. "What did you say to Christophe, Jeremy?" "Nothing," said Jeremy. "You did," Christophe cried. "And so did the others." The shivering wouldn't stop. "What others?" said Miss Finch. Christophe pointed at the 3 rats. 4 against 1? That's bullying," said Miss Finch. She kept Jeremy and the rats in at break, but she sent Christophe out to play. "You're very quiet, Christophe," said Papa that night. Is anything wrong?" Christophe didn't want to tell Papa, but somehow it all fell out of him. He cried. He couldn't stop himself. Papa held him tight. He told Papa everything that had happened. There were no more tears to come. When there were no more tears to come, they sat quietly together. The room had grown dark. The pale face of the moon looked in through the open window. "Papa, why did they pick on me?" he said. Papa shrugged his shoulders. His eyes glistened. They were full of tears. Christophe tugged at Papa's arm. "You didn't answer me, Papa. Why does that boy hate me? Why does he want to hurt me?" "Ce n'est pas tout," Papa said sadly. "It's the same everywhere. Here it's because of the colour of your skin. In our country it's because you are Hutu or Tutsi. In other places it's because of what you believe." "But why, Papa, why?" "It's because people do not know how to be of equal worth. There is always someone who wants to be on top. They say, 'I'm better than you. I'm worth more than you. I should have everything and you should have nothing.'" "But that's not fair," said Christophe. "I know it's not fair, but that doesn't stop them." "I hit him," Christophe said. "I made his lip bleed. Was that wrong?" "That's a difficult question. When you meet someone like that, you've got 2 choices. You fight or you run away. If I hadn't run away, I'd be dead." "I hit him." "Did it make you feel better?" "Yes." "Ah, well. We must deal with these things in our own way, I suppose," Papa sighed. "Now sleep, mon petit." He drew the curtain over the face of the listening moon. Christophe went to school the next day with a scared feeling in his stomach, wondering if Jeremy would pick on him. Every so often their eyes met, and Jeremy gave Christophe a dirty look. But he made no attempt to threaten Christophe, nor did the 3 rats. After a few days, Christophe began to hope that Jeremy would leave him alone, but he never felt quite sure. Little by little, he began to get used to the new school. He made friends, first with the footballers, then with some of the other children in the class. But Greg, freckle-faced Greg, with his wide smile, was Christophe's special friend. At first, he struggled with the work that Miss Finch gave him. Christophe hadn't been to school for 2 years, and he had forgotten everything he had done in his first school. There were lessons, the lessons were in French, and now they were in English. He could only just understand what he had to do. Mama and Papa said to try his best, and it would all come right. But sometimes Christophe wondered if they might be wrong. Then one day something clicked. Christophe worked how to put together a string of letters that made a word. It wasn't long before he was reading all sorts of things, labels, notices, worksheets and instructions, or books of facts that Miss French called reference books. But he wouldn't read stories. He was sure that stories shouldn't be in books, that he wouldn't even try to read them. "Is that all you've read?" said Miss Finch. Christophe hung his head. "Is anything the matter?" "I don't like the story," he said. Miss Finch told him to put it back and choose another one, but that didn't help. He stared out of the window and dreamed beautiful dreams instead. "Christophe, you're dreaming," said Miss Finch. "Sorry, miss," he said. He couldn't tell her what was wrong. One lunchtime when they were playing football, he was the goalkeeper and Pete, who was one of the footballers, tried for a goal. Christophe saw the ball flying towards him. He jumped sideways. He felt the ball ricochet off his fingers. Then he landed stomach first on the playground floor. For a moment he couldn't breathe. It was as if all the breath had been knocked out of him. "Are you all right, Chris?" asked Pete. Christophe's breath began to come back. He breathed in and out, in and out. Strange, harsh, wheezing noises came from his chest. He slipped his hand under his vest and his shirt and ran it over his ribs. "Ouch!" "Let's have a look," said Greg. He reached for Christophe's shirt so that he could see for himself. "Get off!" cried Christophe, and he pushed Greg away. "I'm only trying to see what's the matter," cried Greg. Christophe felt his vest and his shirt being torn out of his hands. He felt the cool breeze on his skin. He saw their faces screw up, their eyes darken. They were both staring at something on his skin. Just above his waist was a long raised lump. It looked as if someone had stuck a piece of purple-brown Play-Doh on Christophe's body, but it wasn't stuck on. It was part of him. He knew what it looked like. He had seen it often enough in the mirror. "What's that?" Pete said uncertainly. "It's a scar," Christophe said sullenly. The other footballers crowded round. They all talked at once. "Does it hurt? What does it feel like? Can I touch it?" asked Greg. Christophe nodded. Greg prodded the lump. "It's hard," he said. "How did you get it?" "I got it from a bullet," Christophe told them. He felt angry. He didn't like them staring. He pulled down his vest. "Come off it. Bullets make holes," said Pete. "It was a bullet. Bullets make holes." "Ask my papa if you don't believe me. The bullet didn't go in. It went past so fast that it burned me." His eyes were smarting. He was afraid he was going to cry. "Who shot you?" asked Greg. "A soldier," said Christophe. "Why?" "Because of the war." "What war?" asked Greg. The bell rang. "Line up, please," said the dinner lady. "You had a lot to talk about," said Miss Finch. "Christophe was telling us about his scar." "Show Miss Finch your scar," Christophe said. "Not if you don't want to," Miss Finch said quickly. "It's all right," he said. Christophe lifted his shirt and vest. He saw the shock on Miss Finch's face. She smiled, but it wasn't a good smile. It looked as if she had borrowed someone's eyes. "He was shot by a bullet," said Greg. "He was fighting in the war," said Pete. "No, I wasn't," said Christophe indignantly. "What war?" said one of the girls. "Slow down," said Miss Finch. "If you want to talk about the war, that's fine by me, but you must stop pestering Christophe with questions. What happens when there's a war? Think hard, everyone." "People fight," said someone, "and sometimes they get killed." "Yes. Now, why do you think they fight?" "Because one side picks on the other." "Why would they do that?" asked Miss Finch. "I don't know," cried Pete. "Because the other side has got something they want." "Good," said Miss Finch. "Any more ideas, Christophe? You've got your hand up." "My papa says it's because there's always someone who wants to be on top. They pick on someone and they say, I'm better than you, I'm worth more than you, I should have everything and you should have nothing. And they kill people who don't do what they say. My papa says, either you fight or you run away, and sometimes it's good to run away. Your papa's a clever man, said Miss Finch softly. That night he went running to meet Papa. Papa saw my scar. Papa, they saw my scar, he said. Oh, said Papa, I didn't want to show them, but they made me. Did they? Frowned Papa. It was all right, Papa. I didn't mind. They asked me what happened, and I told them I was shot, and they didn't believe me. So I said, talk to my papa. My papa will tell you. Then they believed me. How's Mama? She's resting. Is she all right? Asked Christophe. Yes, she's fine. She's tired, that's all. That baby in her tummy is growing quite big now. It's hard work making a baby. I know. I watched Munger making a baby. She got ever so fat, like this. He stretched out his hands to show Papa how big Munger had grown. Is Babby coming yet? No. Papa's eyes went dark. Come on, Papa, Christophe said quickly. Race you to the end of the road. And that's the end of chapter 2 today.